on then.
So hello Dan.
Hello, how are you, Paul?
Very well. So I've been looking forward to speaking to you for some time because we've got a few stories that we wanted to share.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to talk to you about first was your actual gateway into the Atlassian ecosystem. Reason being, you may have heard about this online, or you may have read about this. First of all, Atlassian is a massively growing ecosystem with the growth plans over the next 5 years, which are extraordinary. But with all ecosystems that are growing, we need talent and we need clever people. You're an example of one of those. So tell us about how you entered the ecosystem from sort of your post-college days.
Yeah, so left college at 18. I wasn't one that kind of wanted to go and do uni. I don't think uni kind of suited me, but obviously I needed to go find something else. And heard about kind of, well, we all know IT's kind of be one of the only growing industries, or has been forever.
Yeah.
But I heard about Atlassian, and like anybody, kind of got the best way to start is from the bottom. So I actually found online this from a partner of Atlassian. They're calling it basically like a graduate scheme where you can come and do like certifications, get trained up, become like almost like a new consultant, or certainly new in terms of admin. And so I did that, and it was a 12-week kind of intensive course, and it takes you from everything from, you know, understanding what Atlassian was as a company, Jira, Confluence, obviously being the big apps back then, and then took you through to being able to administer completely. And I loved it, and it was exactly what I wanted. So I ended up staying on with that partner for another 4 years.
Right.
And, you know, went through their support so I could learn, you know, taking in the requests from their customers and how to deal with and seeing the typical kind of common issues that people were experiencing back on server days. Yeah. And then I became a consultant. So then I was actually able to go out and not only discover and talk about new requirements, but then, you know, get the fun bit of building everything and kind of making them happy, effectively. So that's how I came into it.
How long's that journey been? So is it 4 years?
When I was with the partner, that was 4 years, 4.5, something like that. But I've been with kind of Atlassian, or in the Atlassian world now, for just over 6.
Right.
Almost 7 years, which is mad to think kind of how much has changed in that period.
Yeah, it's a hell of a long time. I'm coming up to 10 years, and it's, you know, that progression throughout that timeline is fantastic. Okay, so thanks for that, Dan. That's just a really good example of, first of all, how to get into the Atlassian ecosystem, whether you're in a job that you find quite boring or whether you've got kids who are that sort of graduation type of age and they're looking for something to do. And like Dan says, university isn't for everybody, especially these days for various reasons, cost being one of them. And if you have a very practical way of solving problems, and I think there's some really good thoughts for you there maybe in the future about what you'd like to do. If you were to give yourself one bit of advice, Dan, 7 years ago, Dan, what would you say?
Oh God, definitely like trying to break down the problem a bit more. So when I came into this, kind of this start of my career, I was overwhelmed by how much there is and how technical everything looked, especially back in, you know, when you'll definitely remember this, but 7 years ago, how the height of server of Atlassian was and how technical it, you know, minded you thought you needed to be. Actually, when you break down the initial requirements from the customer or yourself and things like that, just the thing is, always take that step back, because the more you take that step back, the bigger the picture you get, and actually the problem becomes so much easier to solve. And it's just take a little bit by little bit. Even if, one of the best things I ever learned was when you get a technical requirement, just put it in plain English, because then it cannot be misinterpreted. So put it into very clear sentences. I want this. And then it's really, really easy to build against. Yeah,
it is. And that work, that doesn't matter which role you're in, that works full stop. Internally, with externals, with your team, you know, whichever connotation of that's really good advice. So tell us a little bit about the role you do today, job title, what does it actually mean? Give us a bit of that.
So my current role is the Atlassian administrator and the ops agile lead for a financial tech company based out of London.
Yeah.
So my day-to-day could be from having agile conversations with scrum masters or product owners in the ops area, or it could be just, Atlassian administration, whether that's your day-to-day just running of the system or implementing huge new changes with all the new products coming out of point A.
Right. So you get involved in both strategy and the real practical coalface change this field.
Yeah. I mean, that's, to be honest, that's the best way of keeping up with the users and what they're actually after. Every Atlassian admin has to be able to keep their ear to the ground and understand what's going on, because that's also how you keep all your customers, your internal customers, happy.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is really dig down into a topic which is reasonably complex in terms of technically complex, but also something which all our users and our listeners and viewers are experiencing at the moment. And this is this move to be more consolidated than we were, let's say. Okay. Not centralized particularly, but certainly more consolidated, particularly driven by a move to the cloud or the SaaS platform. So just talk to us a little bit about, where was this financial services company before? Were they very Atlassian server based? Give us a little bit on that.
So the core company, I'll give you a bit of background in a second, but the core company were very server based. Yeah. We were actually, for a while, we tried to host our server ourselves, and then we realized that actually it was just taking up far too much time.
Right.
So we ended up putting our server on a hosted environment with a partner.
Yeah.
But yes, we were very focused on that. But our company, my company that I work for, went through a huge acquisition process where we kind of brought together 5 companies into one, which is now what we work for. And that had a mix of cloud. There was a fairly new data center piece and some servers.
Right. And then where did the word consolidation come up then in that process?
I think a lot of it, a few things really, that we saw some very basic very common challenges, sorry. Yeah. Nothing's basic about them. One of them is finances. So, most of these instances had the very same marketplace apps that you see on day-to-day instances now. So there's always the finance piece of why should we pay twice?
Yep. Or 5 times.
Or 5 times, certainly was for a few of them. The other one was transparency and communication. So if I don't have access on those other instances, how do I know what's going on when I should know what's going on? So that was also a huge piece of trying to bring together all these companies' informations into one.
And who did you find in the business was leading that conversation? Because I think a lot of us have heard the easier conversation of, okay, we've got 5 apps, we don't want to spend all that money. Yeah. But who from inside the business was saying, hang on, there's another view to this, which is consolidation of data creates transparency, which creates more efficiency. Where did you hear that sort of language?
We actually had that from 2 angles. So one of them definitely executive, because, as an executive, I'm sure you'll be aware, when you go through these processes, you need to understand what they are doing. You can't just allow them to continue working with no idea. Yeah. So they definitely wanted to get a better picture, and the way to get a better picture is to kind of bring it a little bit more together. Yeah. And the other one was actually from our delivery arm. So, they've got new developers coming up, and again, they need to be able to see what those teams are working on, whether or not, features are going to be duplicated effort, or whether or not we can kind of streamline the process a bit.
Yeah. And then in terms of the start of that journey, where did you start? Was it just your job? Was it actually a team of you that was needed?
Yeah. So we did obviously have a particular department that was leading the cause, but there are certain individuals within our team that kind of really pushed it going. Yeah. The first step, as anything is to actually understand your environments. And that basically means take note of all if we're on Confluence, take note of all the spaces that exist. Are they actually active? Do they hold decent data? Yeah. Because as part of consolidation, you need to understand what exists. Yeah. And that obviously goes the same with Jira projects and stuff. So take note. Then do a huge cleanup. The most important thing with any sort of huge data piece, whether that's consolidation or migrations, is to remove old clutter that just isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Right? There's no point taking stuff from one place to another if it holds no value.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing both of those kind of together, and we got a community of people internal that kind of spread throughout the business that knew that bit of data better.
Yeah.
And we asked them to look at it, work out whether it was valuable. If it was, brilliant. If it wasn't, get rid of it. Right?
Okay.
There's no point holding
And
on
how
to
did you bring those people together? Because I think that is one of the, we've talked about this a few times from a few different angles. There's an emotion, isn't there, related to it? It's like, oh, that's my work I did 7 years ago. I might need that.
Yeah.
Now we've got regulatory requirements, which you'll understand being the financial
Yeah.
industry, and that is something to absolutely consider. But outside of that, we need to remove the emotion slightly. So what type of characters or jobs or people did you pull together in this community?
So I think while it's definitely key to remove some of the emotion, I don't think we can remove it entirely.
Right.
So the thing we did was, the first thing we did is we understood who kind of was that ownership of each of the Jira projects and the Confluence spaces, and we got them in. And unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of it was down to bandwidth. We can't always ask the managers. I'm sure you're too busy, so you might delegate that, for example. So we asked, have they got time? If they haven't, who's the next best person? And we sat them all down together and we said, like, we have to look at this objectively. Yes, I appreciate you may have done this work, but you can't hold on to that. So it took a while to remove that, but it's just about open communication, I think, a lot of it. And then I think over that time, over those, 3 weeks of getting kind of used to what you're looking for, enough people understood where that kind of cutoff period was. Okay.
And then where did you go from there? So you've done the Jira, the Confluence, you've looked at spaces, looked at projects. That's kind of base layer one. Where'd you go from there? So
the next thing then we did was, with what you have to do with any consolidation, is just look for whether or not, for example, the same Jira project key exists in two places. And the reason why is that if you try and put them together, it won't work. So we just did a quick check. That didn't take very long, but we had to do that. That's really important. And then the next step was decide on where the best place, almost the final resting place, was to exist. And we decided cloud.
Okay.
So once we knew where we were going, it was about coming up with the plan and the plan of attack. And is it a big bang? Is it a phased? What the kind.
And what did your company go for?
So we went with a big bang.
A big phased bang.
I'll take the big phased bang. I like that one. So the big bang basically consisted of everything that was of what the business class is mission critical. So that grabbed all of every part of those 5 companies, pulling into one. It grabbed all the major bits of every company, which was about 80% of the data in the end. But and that comes down to regulatory requirements. We have to have that, unfortunately. So that was phase 1. We worked with our partner. That massively helped us through this process, and they helped us understand the right approach. There you go, good girl. So we looked at kind of picking up over the course of our weekend move, the consolidation unit that we did. We basically picked up and used the migration assistants that come from Atlassian. They've certainly come a long way in the last couple of years. So we used those to move as much as we could, and then allowed all those problems that are just inevitable to settle, and then we picked up the final 20 that we wanted and did that as a phase.
And what's an example of those inevitable problems that first couple of weeks back?
Yes. So one of the biggest problem that we had, which I don't think you can kind of ever get away from, is just user access. So sometimes, and they could be from very basic things of my account doesn't, password issues and things like that. Obviously, as any new system goes up, sometimes you just can't get away from those issues. We used Atlassian Access, which did mitigate some of those because we use a provision with Atlassian Access, but still, I thought I could have access to this page, or I can't find this. So again, it's basically some of those that you just kind of got to work through.
I think it's understanding of any large project like that. It's true in IT in general, really, is that kind of real high intensity bit. There's the weekend and then it slowly comes off, but you've got to be aware that first 10 days post migration,
definitely,
it's as hands on deck as it was at that weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. We went through 2 weeks. We knew we ended up having overtime over those weekends just to clear up what we could while users weren't online. To kind of fill the gap.
I'm hearing this more and more actually, which is getting a big chunk of the work done in like a consolidated shorter period of time, like a weekend or 2 weekends. And you're a large organisation, you're an example of that. So you've mentioned the partner. In this example, it was Clearvision that was actually working with Dan and his company. So how did the partner allow you to get the right resource around this intensive period? We talked about those number of weeks over the window of the weekend.
Yourselves basically right from the start advised us to do the data cleanup. Luckily, from my background, I knew that how key those phases were. But again, the emphasis of like it's better to spend the time now, do it right, than having to repeat. So we did all that that prior work. That pre-work is really, really important. And when it comes up to you're coming up to that big weekend, that big start. Having the company to lean on, in your case it was yourselves, but also grabbing those internal users that were really key that you can also lean on. Having just one person run it, it's just too hard.
No,
it's too
you
much
need
work.
more people.
Exactly. So having at least another person internally, maybe 2 or 3, is really good, but also then having the external expertise to help push that over the line.
I've seen that. It's really good advice again for people watching and listening. It is a team game, team sport. These types of big heavy lifting projects. It's not just outsource it, get it done. It's also not just insource it, put it on the guy who's working 40 hours a week already. It's about bringing these skills, complementary skills together, and that's where the success comes. So I think that's a really good example.
Ever, definitely as a kind of one of those hindsight things, if I could do it again, bringing, I would have said, even more people in, and having the communication is key. So one of our biggest things that we did was a communication plan, but unfortunately, as I'm sure a lot of companies do, is that communication sometimes don't get listened to.
That's very true.
So I would definitely say over-emphasis is the better thing to do. And constantly communicate what is going on, and just allow, that way you can hit more and more people.
Exactly. We all know the February 2024 date is the official end of server in the Atlassian ecosystem. In some ways it feels a long time away because we're in the summer of 22. In other ways it feels really close because I'm pretty sure I've got stuff in my diary for then anyway. So let's think about what you said about communication, the preparation, this idea of the more you do before, the easier it is. You talked about the communication strategy, but maybe if you could give yourself another 2 months on the project, how would you either slow it down or where would you go a bit deeper in terms of communication and prep?
So I think one of the first things that you have to do is just acknowledge to the business that this is happening. You don't have to say a date, but you are just giving the mental note to people that we have made this decision and we will be doing it. Right? This is, as an end goal, you can keep it high level, but as an end goal, this is where we want to be. I think your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth are the countdowns to that date. So let's hypothetically say that ours is in a year's time. I think your next set of communications is on the big milestone. So when you've said the date, 6 months from that date, 3 months from that date, 2 months, 1 month, and then 3, 2, 1 weeks. I think the more you do, the more verbose you can be in your communication, hopefully the more users are going to listen. But obviously, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You don't want to over communicate, because then all you're going to have is the trouble of people starting to ignore the key and important messages.
Good. And then in terms of did you do anything like open forum conversations where you got people round a table of the project leaders to say, answer worries or concerns and, get people's view on it? Was that
so we did something slightly differently. So we leaned on our those people brought in for the gardening to kind of help us, because we went to all of those different areas of the business anyway. We already had someone embedded in there.
Great.
So they were key members of our testing. They were key members of any project decisions. So they knew all of these things. And luckily, I'm sure it could have gone better, like any major plan could. But, we got lucky in that our community back then were helping us educate all those other users.
So I think the big takeaway, thanks for that, Dan, there is now, if this isn't on your radar now and you're on server today, now is the time to start putting that date. Like Dan said, look, by the end of 2023, for example, we fully anticipate to be on the Atlassian Cloud platform. That's it. That's your first message. That's what we want to do. And from there, then you begin reviewing your approach. Dan, how many users did you say you were?
We've got 1,200.
1,200. So, Dan's already described, the process. That's a pretty big, organisation, a reasonable size move to the cloud in a restrictive industry like financial services, and they were able to get there, over a number of weekends with good planning. That's exactly what you guys can do, especially if you're in a few hundred users and you're on server today. You should be thinking about that straight away. And if you're a larger, more complex organisation, and that's where this planning and preparation almost has to start tomorrow. Give yourself that year of that year window to really work through it properly, and you will ultimately see those benefits.
So ours in total took us, just for perspective, took us 6 months, and that's only because I think we had some benefits in having backup from yourselves and having a dedicated team to do it. But obviously, if you're thinking of doing consolidation or a migration or any move, because obviously the end is the end. Yeah, you have to start looking at this now.
Yeah. So let's move past the preparation phase. You've gone live. We've talked about how to help with go live, that couple of week window where you're just doing the tidy up. What are the benefits? What are the benefits to consolidating into that single instance or that single platform that you've started to see already?
So one of the best things that we've started to be able to do is give our delivery arm a more holistic view of, how many releases we're doing, where the big issues are within within the applications, and everything that we're trying to do to improve it on the strategy, right? So, and that, because of the consolidation of the companies, that acquisition process, we did take on more products. So having a better picture of all those was huge for those.
And what does your platform consist of then, just for full transparency?
So our software is there to help financial advisors provide better advice to their end customers.
Right.
So our customers are the advisors, and obviously they have theirs. Yeah. Now, in very quick sense, if you have spare money and you want to do something with that, they will be able to look at your risk appetite, how much you've got, where you want to kind of put it, and they'll be able to use the platform to better educate yourself and and hopefully make some right decisions for you. Very good.
And then what products are you using on the Atlassian platform? So obviously you've got Jira and Confluence.
Yeah, so we have Jira software, Jira Service Management for both internal desks and externals. We obviously do have Confluence as well, which is very complementary. But one of the biggest things that we've noticed about, which was released in Team 21, if I'm right, which is the Point A program.
Yeah.
And Point A is like where the Atlassian are taking in all the advice and new ideas across the ecosystem to try and build better products with their customers. And we've actually started using a load of those. Atlas is a good project management communication tool. So every time you have a big project and you want to communicate on that, it's great for that. We've got Compass, which is effectively like your services and microservices directory. So that way it can show you your dependencies on applications if you're doing changes. It can also show you kind of a lot of information of where to go, who to contact, who's responsible, especially in this world of you build it, you own it.
Yeah.
Right? In software nowadays, we need to be able to keep track of who has built it and who does own it. So we use both of those. And something that's very, very new is a product called Beacon, which is a security alert tool for the Atlassian ecosystem.
Right.
So it helps provide companies like ours with especially high security requirements more comfort in the fact that there are these security tools scanning and making sure that our data is safe.
Right. And again, just another example of why 5 years time, 95% of the IT world's going to be on SaaS in some form.
Yes, definitely.
And that community idea of being able to feedback and take ideas from the community just wasn't possible in the server world. It just was so siloed.
Yeah, but I think moving on to the cloud with all of these products now under one organization, it's making it just so easy to to have the context switch without actually switching.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been great to talk to you and really interesting for so many reasons. Not only your journey into the Atlassian ecosystem, but this, it's a great job you have now doing things that we've been talking about for a lot of people on these videos. So I'm sure hopefully they'll find that of interest. And of course, we get to walk your lovely dog.
Yeah, Olive
in beautiful sunny Hampshire today.
Yeah.
And we're calling on our Gary Neville and Roy Keane essence when we're doing this video.
Definitely.
If no one's seen that, look on YouTube for Roy Keane and Gary Neville. Maybe as good as this one.